Hello, welcome. Thanks for joining this video. This is a very different video from our typical series of videos in that you're going to get a little bit of an introduction into me. I'm the principal face of Mastering the Math of Business. I'm Lorin Young. So we're gonna talk a little bit about who I am and where I've been. I'm going to introduce you a little bit to the Business CPR platform, and hopefully through this video, you'll get a good sense of why you should care about this. I've invested a lot of years in getting to the place that I am right now, and my desire is to share with you some of the things I've learned over the years. So in this video, we're going to be answering three questions. Who is Lorin Young? What is the science of business? And why should I care? So let's start with who is Lorin Young? I'd like to lead with my values. My values anchor me. They help me make decisions, sort through the noise that is just a part and parcel of life. And so here are my values. And they really are in this order. I'm a faith-based person who likes to live with integrity. And through my faith and through my integrity, I'm better able to take care of my family. Many would say, well, why isn't family your number one value? Well, for me, family is the most important part of my life, but I can't be the person I want to be with my family without my faith and without integrity. And then my fourth value is freedom. I value freedom greatly. And then I enjoy relationships. I like people. I like interacting with them. I like learning from them. I like talking with them. And so these are the values that drive Lorin Young. What about my career? Well, I am a retired Fortune 100 executive. I've also owned my own small business. So I'm a previous small business owner. And now I'm focused on more of what you would call consulting, but I refer to it as the science of business. I'm also an author and speaker. So for those of you who want to appreciate a little bit more, the corporate functions I've led are reflected here. I've really been across corporate America as far as my different functional roles. I've been on the front end with marketing and sales. I've done internal communications. I've been part of the strategic planning and the human resources. I've been a controller, and I've done a couple stints in operations. And so with that, I've had a lot of experience during those Fortune 100 years. But hold on, let's pause. For those of you who've tuned into this video and said, I don't want to learn any more about Lorin Young, stop the video, go to this video where you can learn more about the science of business and how it applies to you. For those that want to learn a little bit more, let's go on. So within my breadth of experience, these are some of the areas of expertise. And when I talk about areas of expertise, I'm talking about depth. So my breadth is across those different functions, and my depth is just the years of hands-on experience I have in getting things done. The other thing to appreciate about my breadth and depth of experience is that they've come through a multi-year journey. So I'm just going to take you through the high points. I like to think early in my life it was work and education. So in high school I started to work at Stater Brothers. I then transitioned into Stater Brothers, and I went through a few different universities, culminating at Brigham Young University, where I received an MBA. My first job out of graduate school was with PPG Industries. That's the first Fortune 100 company I worked with. There, I was primarily marketing and sales. And that was business to business. And we can talk about that later. Learned a lot of things during those PPG years. I then made a shift over to financial services. I went to work for Nationwide. It's primarily an insurance company. They also do financial services. During those Nationwide years, I worked at the corporate headquarters, and that's where I really broadened out my experience. I worked in an array of corporate functions. Had a really interesting time during those years at Nationwide that took me to VPI Pet Insurance. This was at the time a subsidiary of Nationwide. Before I retired from VPI and Nationwide, they became a wholly owned business unit. There I was head of human resources and sales. Yeah, I said that. I was VP of sales and human resources, and then I gave up the HR function and took over the marketing function. Coming out of those Nationwide years, I started my own business. Initially I started it around Keystone Revenue Solutions because of the premise that I was oriented around at the time about the keystone to business success is really in your ability to generate sales. With that company, I then acquired a company. This was Design Dynamics. It was a small business located in Southern California. Ran that for a number of years, and then I sold that to R.R. Donnelley because what I really was enjoying was more of getting on the other side of things that I had learned over my career, and so that led me to write these 3 books, and has me positioned in leading out with some of the thinking that emerged during this career of mine, and really culminated in that book in the center, Business CPR. I traveled the country for a number of years working with small business owners, and that's really where I gelled around this principle of Business CPR and the management platform that I developed as a result of that. Originally, I'd planned on leading out with owning a great business, but the more I worked across this country, the more I recognized that there aren't very many small business owners who were ready for the thought process developed in owning a great business. What they needed was more stabilization, which is what Business CPR came out to be. So with that, that's my focus. I am really focused on this Business CPR platform, and those of you who have watched some of these videos will see how I'm anchoring around mastering the math of business, which I think is foundational to the platform that I've built around holding on to more of the cash that comes through your business. CPR stands for Cash, Profits, and Reporting. So with that, let's take a look at what drives me. So what really drives me is I enjoy creating order out of chaos. I had a secretary when I was at Nationwide who gave me this really nice picture that I hung in my office that summarized creating order out of chaos, because that's really what I do. I like to simplify things. And so how do I do that? Well, I'm really good at converting data into actionable information. I found over my years, particularly those corporate years, that when you lead with facts as opposed to opinion and assumptions, you can move things forward faster and get more things done. I'm really astute at determining both organizational and customer needs. That's one of my favorite things is to come in and assess that. I became quite proficient during the latter part of my corporate years, and then as owning my own business at translating goals and strategic priorities into budgets, required programs, processes, and standards. That's really where the rubber hits the road and things get done. I've been valued for my ability to see both the big picture as well as embrace what needs to get done. In other words, I love the thoughts and the ideas, but ultimately those are of no value unless you can translate them into actions that generate results. And I may sound arrogant here, but I've been prized by many for my ability to simplify what is inherently complex. That's really my mantra. I love simplifying what others tend to complicate. So with that, what I would like you to appreciate is that I now consider myself an expert in the science of business, And what I really love to focus on is to identify what needs to be done differently to help those that I elect to help make more money with less stress. And so how do I do that? Well, I do that through what I refer to as the business of science. And the business of science is really about taking the scientific method and applying it to individual businesses around sales, profits, and cash flow. Because really what you're looking at is you're generating sales to create cash that flows into the business, and those cash from that money that flows through the business and out of the business and in expenses from an accounting perspective is referred to as profits. But from a business CPR perspective, what really matters is the cash that gets to go into reserve. In other words, it's one thing to have your financial statement report profits. It's another thing to have your bank statement, particularly in a cash reserve account, show you exactly how much of those profits made it out of the business and into the bank in the form of surplus cash. And so that's really what business CPR is about. It's about answering the question of how does my P&L statement report profits, but yet my bank statement shows I've got no money. That's what business CPR answers. And so the science of business is structured around a scientific method. It's anchored by the reality that those who lead with a one-size-fits-all solution, they will bring some good to the table. There'll be some things that you can work with and build on, but every business is unique, and one of the things that makes them unique is all of the things that happened before their current situation. And then you couple onto that the things they're looking to do, and you really do have a unique business that needs to have some methodology brought to it that's more than what is typically done by consultants. One thing I appreciate about consultants is many of them carry a bag of tricks with them. These are proven things that they've done with other clients. They've had some success with. They're really good at talking to it and presenting it. But the reality is those tend to be more in that one-size-fits-all space. And what I struggle with on the bag of tricks is particularly when I see consultants take the package they prepared for client C. They change out the logos for client T, and it's in essence the same thing they've been doing ever since client B and C. The only change is the logo. Yeah, they'll tweak and they'll add a few things as they go along, but the point is consultants like to work with these bag of tricks because it's easy for them, whereas a business scientist, it takes a different approach, and their approach is really grounded in the fact that I recognize that any business owner that invites me into their business is very cautious. They don't come to that decision lightly, particularly when it involves taking a look behind the curtain. So they're cautious in letting other people into their world. And a business scientist respects that. Another thing that a business scientist does is they appreciate that there's risk. This client has let him into their business, and they mitigate that risk by really looking at what's distinct about that business, what distinctive insights can be pulled out of that business to improve the control over the business versus that off-the-shelf solution that a consultant brings, or that's grounded in more than likely academic theory, as opposed to a business scientist who's coming in and looking at the distinctive elements of the business to identify, again, back to how do I improve sales, profits, and cash flow. A business scientist, it's about the client and helping them. A lot of consultants, it's about their ego and them being appreciated by their client. And I do like to be appreciated, and I do have an ego, but for me, it's about solving the problem. This business isn't making the type of money it should make, nor is the owner holding on to a sufficient amount of cash to maintain a lifestyle that they like. The other thing about a business scientist is they don't jump to uninformed conclusions or unproven recommendations. They're really accepting the uniqueness of a business, and they're starting with using the scientific method to help them get a better grasp of what the current situation or the current state is. The other thing to appreciate is, and this is a quality that both business scientists and consultants have, is that they both have knowledge and experience. They both have opinions and perspective, and they'll both make assumptions, because assumptions are a way to simplify things so that you can move forward. But the difference between a business scientist and a consultant is a business scientist will rely less on those opinions, perspectives, and assumptions, and they'll lean more on their breadth of experience and their depth of experience. So the way I like to think about this is the depth of experience that they generate this knowledge and wisdom from comes from an array of experiences they've had through the years, coupled with breadth. That's doing those things over and over again as far as getting it done. And often what it involves is different sets of experiences where you've got depth are starting to integrate and interrelate, and that's where the breadth forms. So it's about breadth and depth. And it's about bringing those two elements together to really help solve business-specific problems. And a business scientist is solving business-specific problems. And for those of you who are visual, this is the part I'm talking to. It's about critical thinking that's grounded in facts through data collection and then interpretation of that data. And then once that's all gelled together, there's a communication of findings, conclusions, and solutions. In other words, what do the facts tell us? What conclusions do we draw from those facts? And what does this lead us to now do? And this is all grounded in what's referred to as the scientific method. And the scientific method starts with an observation. That observation is really formed through an hypothesis. And yes, knowledge, experience, perspective is all part of bringing this hypothesis forward. But the hypothesis is only as good as the research. And so when you're able to perform the research that generates findings, resulting in conclusions that either confirm the hypothesis or prove that hypothesis is not correct. And so with that, let's appreciate the 6 core steps in the scientific method. And these are universal. Pretty much any R&D, any really heavy science-based entities and activities are doing these 6 steps in some form or another. They're making an observation. They're leaning on what is already known. Between those two, they've now formed a hypothesis. In other words, now they're going to do an experiment. And that experiment will either prove or disprove the hypothesis. And so they'll draw a conclusion. And when that works, they're going to then communicate the conclusion. In other words, when they've moved through these first 2 steps and proved their hypothesis through the experiment, they're now going to communicate their results or their findings. The challenge is that if the hypothesis isn't proven through the experiment, they go back into this loop until they are able to actually prove the hypothesis. Now they have a conclusion that they can communicate. So with that, let's appreciate just how the scientific method applies to you, a small business owner or the member of a management team that's trying to realize better results. The scientific method does apply to business. And it really starts with the observation, is this a good business to own, yes or no? And that's ultimately the question. Because if a business is a good business to own, then it has a lot of things going for it in that someone is willing to pay another to acquire that business. If that is not a good business to own, then that's a business with problems. And those problems are what are holding it back from being a business that someone else would like to acquire. And so with that, you do ask a couple of questions. And these questions help you answer the yes or no question. This is black or white. It's either a good business to own, yes or no. And if the answer is no, then what you're doing is you're grounding yourself in what is already known. And this is really leaning on the financial statements. The financial statements that tell you where the business has been and what the business has done. And the combination of those two help you formulate the hypothesis. In other words, where is the business leaking profits and robbing itself of cash flow? That becomes the hypothesis. So out of your financials, you can get a pretty good sense of what's not working, where the bleeding and leaking is occurring. Then you come down here into costing out the hypothesis. In other words, the science of business is really about costing out. What are these problems costing us? And you do that to appreciate where you can prioritize. It's about focusing on the critical few things, not the relevant many things that could be done. And that's how you're able to then draw conclusions, and those conclusions help you prioritize what needs to be fixed. Because no business, I don't care how big you are, has endless amount of resources to solve all the problems that are getting in the way of them making more money. And so once you do that, you've drawn the conclusion, you've identified where you're going to fix things. Now what you're doing is you're defining your action plan. And in other words, it's the who, what, and when. Who's going to do what? And when is it going to be done by? And this is a really important part of the process, because now you've calculated the cost of the problems. You've formed a conclusion that you no longer want to live with that problem. Now you got to assign the team of people that are going to work to bring the solution forward. In other words, there's going to be one person that's accountable for results. In other words, this is the person that owns the problem, and it's their job to solve it. There may be some people that they're going to consult with to get some added insights and perspectives that they may not have. And there may be some people that are responsible for doing certain parts of the work to be done, the actions to be completed to generate the new result. And then there are going to be those who need to be informed of decisions that have been made, because these are the ones that are actually going to carry the weight going forward. And so this is called the ACRI model, and what it really is it's about identifying where the buck stops and who needs to be involved in generating these improved results. With that, now you're in a position to start to communicate. And the reason why you're communicating is people need to be informed, particularly those that are going to be impacted by the work that's getting done here. And you do that because there's going to be change, and that change sticks better when people are informed. When they connect with the cost of the problem, they're better able to appreciate the work that's being done and the solution that gets identified. And when that happens, your desired results are more reoccurring as opposed to a blip. Okay, we had a little more attention here, so we got this bump in our results. But once the attention shifts to something else, everything falls back to the norm. This method helps you anchor people in the cost of the problems, because you've grounded them on a sound understanding of what's wrong. And then now you can build the team that's going to generate the solution. So with that, the point of all of this is once you get really good at this, then it's just repeat. Keep doing it over and over again to make even more money. And so with that, the science of business is really something that you should care about. You should care about it specifically if you're not here. So if you're a business that is thriving, in other words, it's firing on all cylinders and everything is going great, then yeah, okay, you know what? You might want to stop here. But if you're not sure if you're a thriving business or not, here's how you know. A thriving business has two things going for it. The people in that business, particularly the management team and ownership, have discretionary time. In other words, they're free to do whatever they want to, whenever they want to. That's a thriving business. Plus, they have the money they need to fund whatever it is they want to do whenever they want to do it. That's a thriving business. I like to think of it in this way. I like to think of it in terms of the currency of business. It really is an exchange. That exchange is often I'll exchange time. In other words, an employee of yours exchanges their time for a wage, a salary, the money they take home from you. So they're giving you their time and you're giving them money for it. Or your customers are paying you money because they want to save time by having you do it rather than them doing it themselves. And those that are really firing on all cylinders, they get to have both time and money. They have time and currency. But the point is, if you're thriving, you've got this in abundance. If you aren't thriving and you're more in that surviving zone and you want more, then it really is about changing up what you're doing to create different results. And that's why the science of business matters. It matters because the primary goal of a business scientist is to help businesses move from the surviving to thriving stage. And for some businesses, it's a matter of just turning on a few lights and showing them a better way on a couple of fronts, and they can start moving closer to that thriving zone. For businesses that are really struggling and are barely surviving, it's about focus. It's about getting rid of the noise and focusing on a critical few set of actions that need to be taken to stabilize the business. So with that, disciplined actions based on facts and principles, proven principles, allow you to make upgrades to your strategy, your structure, your systems, and your standards. These are all of the things that enable your profit model to function. And you know you have a functioning profit model when management is in control of the business owner's wealth-producing resources. In other words, the strategy, structure, systems, and standards are pulling together to maximize the resources of a business. And the way to think about resources is really reflected on the balance sheet, specifically in assets. The assets of a business represent the resource of the business, and those assets have one of two owners. Either the assets were funded by the owners, and that's represented as equity, or money was borrowed against those assets, and that represents liabilities. And so with that, businesses who are barely surviving are really bad at deploying their assets. And the way to think about deploying assets is really shown on the P&L statement. Your assets are being deployed to generate sales at a profit. And businesses that are not very good here tend to be overweighted here, putting downward pressure on their profits. And so the science of business is about holding on to more money than you spend. And one way you do that is by understanding the results of your business. It starts with appreciating that your balance sheet reports the business asset position and the ownership of those assets. And rarely, very few businesses own 100% of their assets. Most of them have some mix of liability on top of the equity they put in to acquire their assets. And those assets exist to do two things. They exist, and what they exist to do is shown on the P&L statement, the top line and the bottom line. They exist to drive net sales that then bring in cash to fund all of the expenses, and then what's left over is the net income or profit. You do that well, and that's going to then get transferred back to the balance sheet as retained earnings. In fact, this is actually one of the quickest ways to tell whether a business is a good business to own, yes or no, is to look at the retained earnings. If a business has negative retained earnings, that means that they've generated losses that have been transferred over to their retained earnings, and they haven't recovered that by generating higher profits. And so this is the only connection between these two financial statements. But it's your assets that shape what happens here, and it's management's efforts in maximizing the value of those assets that drives the results on the P&L statement. So with that, as you think about the science of business, think in terms of the fact that that here within this business, we bring two products forward. We have two product groupings. We have business CPR, which is all about stabilizing a business and helping it maximize its cash flow from profits through better reporting. And then we have what I call the OGB, which is owning a great business. There's a series of products and services in this space that are about businesses that are stable, but they wanna move into more of a thriving space where they're actually more of a substantial business. That's what the OGB product suite's about. These products have been developed, and I love this quote here. Experience is a hard teacher because she gives the test first, the lesson afterward. And one of the things that really anchors me is I love having experiences that I can learn from. And those experiences help me better prepare and be positioned for the next set of experiences. But the reality is you're going into each experience with the best you have to offer at that moment. And then you're going to learn afterwards. Some of the things, sometimes it's going to go better than you expect. Other times it'll be a complete and total mess. But the point is, you're going to get the test up front, and then you're going to learn about it afterwards. So this is one of the key principles. You have to get this formula. In other words, your cost, expenses, payables, all the money going out of the business has to be less than the money coming in to earn a profit. And those who do this by making decisions in the dark, in other words, they push investments into the business, but they're really not grounded in anything other than just gut instinct or oh well, we'll just do this. Those are the people that are earning their profits by chance. Whereas those that are more aware of all the decisions and actions that need to occur to convert investments into profits, in other words, a return on those investments as opposed to a loss, they need to simplify these things. They simplify them by anchoring on the facts, by removing uncertainty, and by doing that, these numbers increase, confidence increases, and stress decreases. And how does that happen? Well, it happens by getting more top line. In other words, you're growing your sales. As you're growing your sales, you're reducing your expenses as a percent of those sales. That then leads to higher profits. Higher profits allow you to be in more of this mix as far as who owns the assets as opposed to this mix. People that are over here have greater stress and more uncertainty. In other words, things aren't going well. People that are over here, they live with less stress because they have less uncertainty. Hopefully, this video has has opened your mind to a couple of things, giving you a little more confidence in the voice of these Mastering the Math of Business videos, as well as giving you an interest in taking an action. If you are prepared to act, visit business-cpr.com/scheduler to get started. If you're still uncertain, then the invitation's there to go check out our Why Should I Consider Business CPR products and services. Check it out. You'll get some insights on the array of different products and services we bring to help people make more money with less stress. And the reason why I want you to think about this is I really do wish people I work with blue skies and clear roads ahead. There is nothing better than having a good view of the horizon with no obstacles in your way. Makes for a great journey. And that's what we're all on. We're on a journey. And my hope is that I can help make that a more enjoyable journey by helping you see a few things that are there. You just need to know where to look. Again, if you're prepared to act, go to business-cpr.com scheduler, and I'd love to connect with you or one of our other business scientists. Again, thank you for tuning into this video and making it to this point. It is appreciated.